G'day guys, how are we doing? Welcome to the weekly roundup. It is Friday, May the 31st, 2024, and not a great way to start the weekly roundup this week. The news has just come through that Tim Tszyu has been ruled out of his fight with Victor Ortiz for the WBA Super Welterweight title in August 3rd to be exact, on the Terence Crawford and Madrimov undercard. Yeah, it's a pretty tough one, and by the way, it is an interim title, by the way, not the full title. But look, it's a tough one to swallow, isn't it? I mean, it's amazing to think that a couple of months ago, Tim Tszyu on top of the world, WBO 154-pound champion, fighting Fundora for the vacant WBC belt as well, and again, we're not going to punish the corner here. We've been all over the management and the corner, all that sort of stuff. So we're not going to go over that again. But isn't it amazing that one decision, and I'm sure they would have thought it was the right decision at the time. So again, I'm not going to go over that. But to think that one decision has almost snowballed into just one thing after another with Tim now. And of course, I refer to not stopping the fight before the fourth round, which would have given Tim the technical draw, or worst case, maybe a draw on the scorecards, and he would have retained the belts. Could have probably sat out as long as he probably wanted to or needed to, and would have kept those belts and still had those fights. Because you have to remember, he was on the verge of getting past the Fundora fight. Of course, it was supposed to be Thurman for starters, and then Fundora. Terence Crawford was supposed to be after that. Who knows what might have happened after that, whether it be Charlo or Spence or Canelo. Who knows what might have happened, but he really was on top of the world. And again, it's just amazing to think that just with that one decision, whether it was right or wrong, again, I'm not going to cast aspersions over that. We've been over that enough. But the fact that the decision wasn't made at the time, we're now sitting at the point where Tim has no belts, has no fight lined up. All those fighters in that division will now move on, and most of them have, of course. Crawford is fighting Madrimov. Spence is fighting Fundora, which we'll get to in a second. Ortiz will no doubt move on and fight someone else for the interim belt. And all of a sudden, Tim Tszyu is frozen out. So it's just, this sport sometimes can be so cruel, so fickle, that 1 minute you're sitting on top of the world and the next minute you have no prospects. So, look, I'm sure this will turn very, very quickly, by the way. I'm sure Tim is very frustrated at the moment. He would have wanted to get in there. The one question I probably do have with it all is that we're 8 weeks out, maybe 9 weeks out. So I'm not sure how they make the call so early. Maybe it's not necessarily being able to fight by that stage. Maybe it's the fact he can't spar. I did see that. Looks like it's being they're going to allocate him a 6-week block of not being able to spar. The other thing I would like to know is he's just got back from Thailand, and as far as I know, he's in Australia. So I'm not quite sure how Californian doctors have adjudicated this. I'm not sure. I'm sure it'll all come out. It's only in the last hour or so that this has all happened. So, but yeah, a lot of questions to be asked. But the fact that we're 8 to 9 weeks out from the fight and they've already ruled him out, understandably, it was a bad cut, but I'm not quite sure why they wouldn't have actually inspected the cut and give a bit of a time frame at that stage before they went ahead and announced this fight. Or what's it been, 4 or 5 weeks, maybe even longer since this fight's been announced. And this is the first stage I've had of actually inspecting the cut and saying, no, Tim, you're 6 weeks away from even sparring, let alone fighting. So it's a really peculiar situation. And again, I'm sure it'll all come to hand. But again, I just feel for Tim Tszyu in this situation, as I said, 2 months ago, absolutely flying, and the world that was there for him to take. And then two months on, he's sitting there with no belts, no fights, no prospects at the moment. And again, I'm sure that will change once he's ready to go. Knowing the management of Tim Tszyu, of course, No Limit, Glenn Jennings, I'm sure they're already working on it now. But at this stage, yeah, just really, really disappointed for Tim and Australian fight fans, and even worldwide fight fans. This fight on this card with Ortiz, it probably got more publicity than the Crawford Madrimov fight. So let's just see what happens. I'm sure once the dust settles and there'll be more statements to come, Tim will no doubt speak. I'm sure everyone concerned, Glenn and the No Limit boys, will all speak a little bit more on this and get it clarified a little bit more for us. But again, I'm just a little bit puzzled as to why, being 8 to 9 weeks out, it's happening now, and why this wasn't made before the decision wasn't made, or the cut inspected more closely before this fight was signed and announced. But let's see what happens with that one going forward. Some other news this week on the Australian scene. No Limit on wasn't announced. Sorry, it wasn't the No Limit on Fox show. This is a pay-per-view that's being announced for July 10 in Newcastle. Sammy Goodman will fight Shanoi Warawat. I think that's how you pronounce it. Over 12 rounds in yet another title eliminator. He's had quite a few over the last couple of years. Sam Goodman, of course, he did jump in the ring with Naoya Inoue after his last defense in Japan a month or so ago. But obviously, Warawat has stepped in now as the opponent. Looks like, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Inoue will fight former champion and former Sam Goodman victim, by the way, TJ Doheny, which does not make a lot of sense to me. I'm sure there's lots of reasons for that, but it just doesn't make any sense. The Sam Goodman Inoue fight for me was probably hard to get my head around, let alone TJ Doheny, who hasn't probably looked his best in the last few years. Of course, as I said, he was beaten by Sam Goodman. Has had a couple of wins, I will say, but I don't think any of those wins would be enough to warrant a crack at the undisputed champion. But again, lots of things go on behind closed doors, so I won't even attempt to work it all out. But the end of the day, Sam Goodman will fight Shanoi Warawat. Now, Warawat is undefeated, 25-0-1. So as I said, that fight will be over 12 rounds, with the view of getting Sam Goodman in the ring with Inoue maybe in December. So or November, December. So plenty to look at for that one. Liam Wilson will make his comeback in a tough fight, I will say, against Yusuf Dib in a 10-round fight at 135. So Liam's first step into the ring as a lightweight. Also on that card, Barry Hall will fight Curtis Scott in is it a real heavyweight fight? Is it a novelty heavyweight fight? I don't know. I know Barry Hall, of course, has dipped his toe in the water as far as being a legitimate boxer goes. Obviously didn't end well for him in his last fight against Sonny Bill Williams. But Curtis Scott, I'm not too familiar about him. He's a rugby player, I know, and did get a big knockout on the last show he was on. So I'm sure as a 6th round will be entertaining, but for me, doesn't really get the blood flowing. The other fights on that card, Billy Polkinghorn will make his long-awaited professional debut, being a very, very good amateur fighter. He'll fight Jordan Casillas, I think that's how you pronounce it, over 6 rounds at 140. Brendan Grush, the big, exciting heavyweight, will fight John Malia over 6 rounds. And in the other fights on the card, Monir Fathi will fight Anton Markovic over 6 rounds at 154. The heavyweights, Liam Taliva and Johan Lind will fight. And the girls, Chanel Dargan and Irene Ramirez, will round out the card. So that's a pay-per-view, $69 or $70, whatever it might be, Newcastle, July 10. So we'll keep a lookout for that one. And we'll, of course, as always, do the watch-along live for anyone that either can't watch it or doesn't want to pay to watch it. So I'll keep you up to date a little bit more with that one. Still on the Aussie scene, the Premier Boxing Series had its 4th installment last week. Dan Hill, with the 7th round stoppage of Tai Keon Kim. Dan Hill improved to 6-1. Tai Keon Kim dropped to 9-2-1. I will say it was a little bit of a disappointing fight. I expected a lot more from Kim. Dan Hill did push the fight, as he always does, but Kim, who has been really exciting in previous fights, didn't really turn up to take Hill on, and at the end of the day was stopped in the 7th round. In the main support on that card up there at Southport Sharks, Diana Didi Hobbs improved to 12-2-1 with an 8-round decision over Angel Rushton. She dropped to 4-2. That was for the WBO Asia Pacific super featherweight title. I thought the scorecards were quite wide, I thought, for Hobbs. One of them was a draw. But I actually thought Rushton might have come close. A very tough fight to score, by the way, so no arguments that Hobbs got the decision. I think Rushton made more noises rather than with her mouth rather than with her hands, really. But yeah, Hobbs now the WBO Asia Pacific super featherweight title holder. And on the undercard, a couple of fights of many that were on that card, by the way. Stephen Ivic, I think it was pronounced, improved to 5-0-1 with a 5-round decision over Amato Mataka, who dropped to 4-1. And Favisi Asako with a 5-round decision over Charlie Bell, who dropped to 4-1. On to the world scene, and it's all about one show this weekend. We're back in Saudi Arabia. The main event, Deontay Wilder will take on Zhilei Zhang over 12 rounds at heavyweight. Wilder 43-3-1 against Zhang 26-2-1. Really looking forward to this card. And again, we will be doing the live watch along from 6 a.m. on Sunday morning Australian time. That's Eastern time. So tune in for that. Really intrigued by this fight. Wilder, who looked absolutely shocking in his decision loss to Joseph Parker last time out against Zhang. It wasn't against. Zhang also lost to Parker, of course. And he looked equally as shocking as well. So that probably says a lot about Joseph Parker, who's on a real roll at the moment. But I don't really know what to make of this fight. I can see Wilder coming out and standing center ring and trying to bomb Zhang out, or Zhang going after Wilder trying to take him out. I think the only chance that Wilder has, in my opinion, is to take center ring, try and line up a very immobile Zhang with that big right hand and try and bomb him out of there. I'm not quite sure he can outbox Zhang. And Zhang, on the other hand, I'm not quite sure he can box on the back foot either. Even coming forward, he sometimes looks like a statue. So really fascinating fight. My tip at this stage is probably Zhang, but not with a lot of confidence. In the main support on that card and another heavyweight fight, Filip Hrgovic, 17-0, will take on Daniel Dubois, former world title challenger, of course, who's 20 wins and 2 losses over 12 rounds at heavyweight. Dmitry Bivol, 22-0, will defend his WBA and IBO light heavyweight titles against a late replacement Malik Zinad. Both of these guys 22-0, by the way. Of course, Zinad is a replacement for Artur Beterbiev, and I can't believe that this would have been the weekend it finally happened. I'm sure we'll get it down the track, but credit to Zinad, who had a good win over Jerome Pampalone on the last Nikita Tszyu undercard. So that should be a great fight, as I said, for those light heavyweight belts. And in the other 2 fights, this is a 5x5 card, of course. Queensberry versus Matchroom. The other fights on the card, I'll go back a bit. Raymond Ford, I apologise, will fight Nick Ball for the WBA featherweight title. So Ford 15-0-1, Nick Ball 19-0-1. That should be a really good fight. Not quite sure who I've got winning that fight. Both, Ford looked really good. Ball unlucky in his last fight against Vargas. I'm probably going to stick with Raymond Ford to win that one. I think he can retain that belt. And just on those other 2 fights, by the way, I'll pick Bivol to beat Zinad, probably by decision. And I'm backing Hrgovic to beat Dubois, maybe by late round stoppage or worst case by unanimous decision. The other 2 fights on that card, Hamza Shiraz, 19-0, will fight Austin Ammo Williams, 16-0, over 12 rounds at middleweight. And Willie Hutchison, 17-1, will fight Craig Richards, 18-3-1, 12 rounds at light heavyweight. So check it out. It's on DAZN. I think it's $33, $34, something like that. And again, I will be doing a live watch along from 6 a.m. on Sunday morning Australian Eastern Time. Last weekend, Jack Catterall improved to 29-1 with a 12-round decision over Josh Taylor, who dropped to 19-2. Of course, this is a rematch of the fight a couple of years ago when Taylor was very lucky, I thought, to win the decision over Catterall, but he's now got his revenge. The scores 117, 111 times 2, and 116, 113. On the undercard, Christian Mbili did his world title chances no harm with a first-round KO over Mark Heffron. He dropped to 30 wins, 4 losses, and a draw. Mbili improved to 27-0. Big news on the heavyweight front, Alexander Usyk, Tyson Fury 2 has been announced for December 21st in Saudi Arabia, so just 4 days before Christmas. Of course, that's for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. Now, one good thing that is happening with this fight, the IBF initially were going to strip Alexander Usyk. Now it looks like that he will retain that belt and it will be on the line against Fury, which is great news. There is talk that the Hrgovic and Dubois fight will be for the IBF interim title. But the main thing is, I'm not really stressed about that one. The main thing is this fight will be for the 4 belts. And I would say the winner might fight Joshua. I've got a feeling if Alexander Usyk wins the rematch, he will retire. If Tyson Fury wins it, probably have to fight Usyk again. But worst case, it will be Anthony Joshua. So a lot of implications there for the heavyweight division. But isn't it just great that we have a 4-belt champion for the first time? A big fight that was announced just today. Janibek, I'm going to try and get this out. Janibek Alimkhanuly. I hope I got that somewhere right. The WBO and IBF middleweight champion, 15-0, will fight New Zealand's Andre Mikhailovic. Now, this one just took me by surprise, big time. Mikhailovic is 21-0. How he popped up as the world title challenger to Janibek Alimkhanuly. Again, I hope I got that right. Just amazing. I didn't think Mikhailovic was anywhere near a world title fight, let alone one of this magnitude. So that's July 13 at the Palms Casino in Las Vegas. And look, credit to Mikhailovic for taking this fight. Has been pretty impressive, I will say, in the last couple of years, but hasn't fought or beaten, I don't think, anyone even remotely that could be considered world class. But hey, all you got to be these days is ranked in the top 15 by one of these organizations, and he is, and he gets his opportunities. So look, I think always a puncher's chance. I would think that Janibek would be the massive favorite in this fight. But again, credit to Andre Mikhailovic for taking this fight. I have seen Janibek up close and personal in Stockton, California last year, and he can punch, and he's a killer. But Andre Mikhailovic, on the other hand, as well, has shown that he's capable, but whether he has the experience and the ability, I suppose, to win the belts remains to be seen. But it should be a very, very interesting fight for as long as it lasts. The super middleweight scene, Canelo Alvarez. There was talk that he would have to defend his IBF 168-pound title against little-known William Skull. Now, sanity has prevailed, and looks like he will vacate the IBF belt, which I think is a great move. No idea who William Skull is. Certainly wouldn't be a big sell as far as pay-per-views and everything goes, as well as Canelo's popularity. And I think the pennies dropped with Canelo. He doesn't need the belts. I think he's universally recognised, or is universally recognised as the unified champion and the man. So if he's got one less belt, I don't think it really matters. So he will vacate that IBF belt. Now, the odds are he will fight Edward Berlanga in September. He won't fight David Benavidez, that's for sure. But I think the best case scenario is he will fight Berlanga in September. A lot better than William Skull anyway. And one other thing before we finish up. We spoke before about Tim Tszyu. Well, his nemesis, Sebastian Fundora, will fight Errol Spence probably in October in Dallas, Texas for the WBC 154-pound title. It looks like he will relinquish that WBO belt because that's all tied up in with Terence Crawford and everything else. So it's an interesting one. There was obviously talk when Spence got in the ring with Fundora after his win over Tim Tszyu. It was always going to happen. And again, it just highlights again what I was saying before, how quick this sport turns. All of a sudden, it's Fundora with the fight with Spence and probably fighting Crawford after that if all goes according to plan. So a little bit way back for Tim Tszyu to come, but I'm sure he will be back better than ever. Might even be maybe early next year now. Who knows? They might just say, look, just take the rest of the year off. Who knows? But this fight, Fundora and Spence, will take place in October in Dallas, Texas, just for the WBC 154-pound belt, which is a really good fight. I'm not sure Errol Spence is it was deserving of this opportunity, but he's still a big name in the sport, and I don't really blame Fundora for trying to get him at this stage of his career. So, guys, that is it for the weekly roundup. I hope I haven't missed anything. I'm sure you'll let me know if I have. But again, make sure you check me out on Sunday morning, 6 a.m. Australian Eastern Time for the 5x5 show from Saudi Arabia. Matchroom versus Queensberry should be a great card, and look forward to seeing you then.